What is up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here, and today we are going to talk about Circle 2 putting. And we may have, I don't know, like a little announcement. Before we dive in, we gotta ask the most important question of the day. How you doing today, Jordan? You having a good one?
So catch me if I fall.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is no secret. I'm not gonna hold you back too long. Time for an announcement. The announcement is we have a restock of Birdie Blend putters available on foundationdisc.com. If you haven't checked it out and you are interested in trying out an exclusive blend that I got to work with Foundation and Gateway on, this is Birdie Blend plastic. It is a super tacky, it's like grippy, feels very great, but it's very firm, so it feels great on putting. If you're someone who likes a little pop on it, then yeah. Fantastic. Restocked it. It's been several months. I think we've actually only restocked it once in 2025. So it's live on the website right now, foundationdisc.com. Make sure you go check it out. What, did you guys think that like we're going to be like announcing something else? All right. So let's talk Circle 2 putting, because Circle 2 putting is something that I feel really conflicts with a putting mentality that I've heard even someone as good as Eagle McMahon bring up. And that is, I remember Eagle McMahon talking in a putting video and his sort of practice drill where he mentioned that if you get to the end of your practice putting and you're putting somewhere that you're not making 50% of your putts, then you aren't actually practicing getting better at putting. In fact, if you're missing more than 50% of the putts at whatever range you're practicing at, you're in fact practicing missing. And I see this all too often. I see people go to practice putting and we go to this range where we're pushing ourselves to the point of we've moved past the gimme distance, we've moved past the I feel like I should make distance, and instead of going to a comfortable middle ground, we actually move all the way back to an impossible distance, or a distance that is way less likely than what we should be aiming for in the first place. And then we get frustrated because we're just not succeeding while we're trying to hit these putts, and so we're like, I hate my life, I can't do this, I'm a terrible putter. And we just continue to build this narrative that we're bad at putting, and it doesn't make us want to practice putting, because you're right, you're out there missing 50% or more of your putts. And even if you want to say and lean into the Eagle McMahon side of things, well, I don't want to be practicing missing and like teaching myself how to miss, so I guess I just won't practice. And I think that's where a lot of people land on this topic. But here's the issue when it comes to Circle 2. If we look at the Disc Golf Pro Tour, the best players in the world, and we look at some of their putting statistics, and we go to Circle 2 statistics, if someone were playing in a tournament and they were to be at the top of Circle 2 putting, and they were in the 40% category, meaning they had made 40% of the Circle 2 attempts that they had throughout the weekend, that would put them in an elite putting category for the weekend. So if I'm supposed to be practicing Circle 2 putting and I'm making 40% of my putts, that makes me elite, but I don't want to be missing more than 50% of my putts because then I'm practicing missing, you can see the struggle here. Should I practice Circle 2 putting because I'm just simply not going to be much better at it? But if I never practice it, then I can't get good at the skill, and being elite at the skill means I'm only gonna make probably 30 to 40% of them. What am I supposed to do, Mr. YouTube man? Well, I think this is an important thing that needs to be discussed, and I'm not really aware of any video out there on the internet, even as the putting guy, I don't think that I've ever put out a video specifically addressing this. So I have 3 things that I think you should practice, or three points that I think you should look at in order to work on your Circle 2 without necessarily drilling in this idea of missing. So let's bang through those real fast, shall we? Now our first tip for practicing circle twos actually comes from a similar tip that I give when I'm teaching people how to spin putt, right? We want to work at the minimal distance possible in order to sort of feel and get that mechanic dialed. So if you're someone who struggles with 15 to 20 footers in general, then a circle two putt still has to be 34 feet or farther, 10 meters or farther. And we're gonna work at that range. But if I'm teaching someone how to spin putt, I'm not having them spin putt from huge long distances. I'm actually starting them super close to the basket. As a not spin putter, you can see here, I didn't even dial that in, because I want them to feel that motion without having to worry about necessarily generating all of the power to get it there. I want them to focus on getting the motion right. So we're gonna start super close to the basket, and then as it feels comfortable, and you can see that, okay, we striped 2 of them right on the pole. Now I feel comfortable moving a little further back. So what does that mean for circle 2? Well, that means starting at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I'm gonna stack up some yellow leaves right here, and we'll make like a little stick wall. So now I know that this right here is the edge of the circle for me. So everything past that is what I'm trying to practice. So instead of starting at 50 feet, being all the way back on the sidewalk, whatever that may be, what I want to do is I want to go to just the edge of the circle to see, okay, this is what a putt at the edge of circle feels like. This is what a true circle two, this is the most basic circle two putt. This is what it feels like. And I want to practice that range. Now it's important to note that there is one major rule that is different between circle one and circle two putts, and that is a demonstration of balance after you putt. When I find myself on this side of the circle two line, if I am outside of the circle, I do not have to maintain balance after throwing the putt before moving forward because I am outside of the circle, which means that if I want to, on this putt, follow through, that is perfectly legal. The disc has left my hand, and because of that, I'm allowed to basically possess and show weight landing on the other side. However, if I was simply 1 foot forward, now my lie finds itself inside the circle, that same putt that I just did is illegal. So I have to throw the putt, and I have to either demonstrate balance by staying forward, or I have to be able to go backwards. I cannot progress forward over the weight of my lie without incurring a 1-stroke penalty for a foot fault on my putt. If I'm inside the circle, you got to demonstrate balance. If I'm outside the circle, you can step through. Now, for the first tip where we're practicing the minimum sort of circle two range, one of the biggest things that you want to do at this range is you want to figure out how to generate enough power to get the disc to the basket, get it to the height of the basket on time. We're not talking about simply getting it to touch the pole, because that is going to be a layup from out here. If I'm throwing and they're hitting the pole on their way in, they didn't have enough power to actually be a successful make, and I'm just as good not actually putting from that range. In fact, I'm going to have less variables if I just plan on even turning the disc upside down and then sliding it towards the basket for a tap in. I want to make sure that when I'm putting from this range, that whatever I have to do, whether that's engage the legs a good bit more, whether that's swing my arm more, whether it's adding more wrist pop because I'm trying to spin the putt. And I'll go ahead and tell you that if you're trying to figure eight, which is whipping the disc in and out, as Max Strauss says, you know, he talks about figure eighting the disc. That is one of the easiest ways to generate power on the disc, but it is also the biggest trap, I think, in disc golf putting, because of the fact that this power is just uncontrollable. So we never want to be adding in the easy way of figure eighting, because it's just really hard to aim and get used to. And yeah, we'd much rather find the power elsewhere. And that could even be, if I want to find the power in the legs by stepping through, whatever I want to do in order to make sure that when it's passing the basket, that it is at least chain high. Like right there, that putt, if the editing team plays it for you again, you'll see in the freeze frame that it was chain high. just right of the basket, that is a perfectly acceptable circle 2 putt. Why? Because while it didn't go in the basket, it at least had enough power to be there. So what I want you to experiment with is not necessarily trying to make all of your circle 2 putts, but if you're someone who struggles with circle 2 in general, find out what levers and mechanisms you can use inside of circle 2 to get a consistently powerful enough putt that they have a chance of going in at circle 2. Now the next option is going to be a little different. Tip 2 to start making more circle 2 putts is to not necessarily just think about using your main putting putter. Instead, you may want to switch to something different, like maybe your main putting putter in a lighter weight, because that allows it to have a little more free glide and a little more free access to power. Perhaps you're going with just a different putter entirely that has more glide to it to make things a little easier. You could even step up to a mid-range, like a slow mid-range with a little more natural float to it if you wanted. Or you could really just go crazy and decide that you want to putt with a mid-range from circle 2 because it's going to have maybe a little more glide, a little get there faster, whatever that may be. Now I know that there will be coaches who push back on this because I'm probably one of the only people who does this, but I don't think that it's a terrible idea to have a different putter when you find yourself farther away. I think that you can learn and have consistency. You have someone who's as good at putting as Mike Strauss is, who just uses Lunas from anywhere from 4 feet away from the basket to 100 feet away from the basket because he's got a 100-foot standstill spin putt that is just absolutely incredible, and it's a beauty to watch. Man, that guy's just so good at disc golf, guys. I cannot stress that enough. So I think you can certainly learn when you're learning your power mechanism to say, hey, this is my standard putter, and it's going to allow you to have that consistency from a certain range. But like me, that one is 170 grams or 172 grams. This putter, this little swirly guy, is 170 grams. And yeah, 2 grams shouldn't make that much of a difference. But even if mentally it allows me to have a little more confidence, then hey, that works. I personally am known for my longer putts, especially my longer uphill putts that I'm working on. I love to use a polecat for these. It just takes me back to my Frisbee days, and there had a little bit of a tailwind, didn't pop it near as much, but I love using my lid type disc from those ranges. I know Greg Barsby is pretty infamous for this as well. This Zone SS we just picked up at USDGC. It's going to have a little more overstability to it, a little more bite, which allows me to shape it from that range. And then this is a base plastic dune. Almost took out our camera with it, but let's see. We look at those putts. 2 of them went off the cage, so they were low. They didn't have enough power to get there. One of them was chain high left, and then the other came off the band. So power mechanisms, we know we were on 3 out of 5, and then the other 2, I liked the line just a little low, so just a little more power out of them, and we would have had 2 more successes, which feels great. A warning and caveat that I will give if you are someone who wants to try out this, maybe try a different putter method, is that you're gonna want to practice with it. You're gonna wanna make sure that you are using the other putter often and working with it so that you're not just stepping up in the middle of a round, especially one that's scored or is slightly competitive, and you're like, well, you know, what's the worst that could happen? Well, I guess the worst that could happen is you miss with your regular putter or you miss with that one. Those are both pretty bad, I guess, but not really if we're working on this. But for instance, as someone who putts with his polecat quite often, I can tell you that I have probably practiced more putts with my polecat than most people who are going to end up watching this video have practiced putting. Yeah, I probably have more polecat practice putts alone than I'm going to say 60% of people who watch this video have practiced putted in their life. So when I chuck a polecat up there, it's not just like a random hope and a chance. It's definitely a skill that we're working on and practicing. And I don't say that to make people feel bad about their practice putting regimen. I just say that to say that just simply switching the putter isn't always going to be this like magical cure-all that you may be looking for, but it certainly could be a factor in helping you find a little more success in Circle 2. And the third tip that I think is very important is to make sure that we're not giving up more strokes on a low percentage putt than necessary. What I mean by that is that we're working on getting that power dialed in, and so we want to make sure that we give the putter a chance to go into the basket, because there are just rounds that if you're able to hit a couple Circle 2s, it's going to deflate your opponents because they're just thinking, Well, boy golly, I just can't seem to make up a stroke on this guy any way I try. Ever if he's out, he just still seems to make them putts. That guy must be watching some YouTube tutorials. So yeah, we want you to beat like Cowboy Leroy. That'd be sick. But remember, if you are elite at your Circle 2 putting, you're making 30 to 40% of your Circle 2 putts, which means 60 to 70% of the time, 6 or 7 out of 10 attempts that you're gonna make from Circle 2 probably aren't going to go in the basket. And if they aren't going in the basket, you know what? At least, hopefully, we're not giving so much of a run that we're giving up another stroke on the way back, because that's gonna be both really frustrating and really hard to overcome. Like here, for instance, if this is where my putt landed, I'm thinking to myself, man, it would be really awesome to hit this putt. It's basically, from how my putt likes to fly, the one tree that's in my way isn't really in my way. So it would be awesome to hit this putt. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm giving this enough pop and giving it enough of a chance to try to stay into the basket. But notice that I really popped it up there and I didn't pop it flat enough, so it rolled away. So now I've got a long look at a comebacker. If I was doing that figure 8 thing we were talking about, it's really easy to generate the power. Notice how simple that was, but now it's way far past the basket, right? Whereas if I give myself, see, that one didn't have a chance to go in. So not necessarily the best example. That one also didn't have a chance to go in. All right, that one had a chance. So if we go look at the results of those 5 putts, let's talk about what I think would be the most frustrating between the 5. In terms of makeability, the Dune and the Zone SS never had a chance to go in, which means that, yeah, it's frustrating, but they're also, I'm not losing a ton of strokes here because, well, I had a low percent of making the putt anyways, so not a bunch of hair off my back. The Polecat is definitely the most promising because it had the highest chance of going in. And then also, if we just look at the result, it's right here next to the basket. Easy tap in, no harm, no foul. I haven't lost any strokes, low percentage, it's in the basket. We take that. Now, let's talk about the other 2. This one was by far the easiest power getting to the basket, but it is also the farthest away. Now, not only is it far away, but I've put a lot of obstacles between me and the basket, which means that, hey, this is gonna be a tough putt to make. I have a low ceiling because of the branches, so I can't even do my standard putt. So I have to do a weird putt to try and save the par. And because I have to do a weird putt, I'm now even more frustrated that I put myself in an uncomfortable scenario from being in a wide open scenario out there just a moment ago. That one's gonna be pretty frustrating for anyone out there because it's just sitting there knowing like, hey, if I would have just laid it up, I'm actually saving a stroke. Sure, I gave away a chance to get a stroke by just laying it up, but I'm not losing a stroke there either. But I'll tell you that this one by far is probably the most frustrating because what it was trying to give the putter attempt, but I didn't really give it an attempt. I softed the putt, which allowed it to come in on a ton of hyzer. And so I barely gave it enough power to get there. It came in hard on hyzer. And then now I found myself in a scenario where I can't really straddle out. I'm close enough that I feel like I should make this putt, but I have enough obstacles in the way that it actually makes it a hard putt because I can't even, because of this tree, come straight at the basket. So I actually have to come in at an angle going left to right on the basket, which is once again, not an easy putt to make. But if we weren't like a great putter, then I think that's really difficult to make. And I've just gone from an uncommitted putt in a wide open space to giving myself a really hard putt. So if you feel like, hey, we're practicing getting the power on these putts, we just want to make sure that we're not throwing away our chances in generating that power in order to lose other strokes elsewhere. Remember, 60 to 70% chance from that range that we weren't going to make it anyways. So we want to have the polecat opportunity where we do give it a chance to actually go in. I'm not saying that you just have to lay it up. Because if we look at all of our Circle 2 opportunities and we just never run any of them, I think we're not really progressing or getting better at the game. But understanding our percentages helps alleviate the mental pressure of really hating ourselves on the putting green and giving that unnecessary, like, that was a somewhat wide open putt. So I know a lot of people would have kicked themselves on that. A lot of amateurs would have kicked themselves on missing that putt. I had to make those. Statistically, I'm telling you, no, you did not. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video on Circle 2 putting. I hope that's helpful and sort of gives you a bridge, as shaky as that bridge may be, a bridge nonetheless to walk through and navigate the waters between, I don't want to practice missing, so how do we practice a skill when we know that the elite members of that skill are still technically missing more often than they make it? But what of these tips stood out to you? Or do you have Circle 2 putting tips that someone gave you once in a blue moon and you happen to be a Circle 2 merchant? Looking at you, Mr. Swolls McGee Ezra Aderhold. Or even someone like Luke Taylor. They're just like really good at Circle 2. What tips did we miss? What tips have you received that would help? Let us know in the comments down below. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Please make it fantastic for someone else too. But for now, we're going to leave you with the birdie.